So this is the start of me finishing the stuff on the house. And this was all things that I either did not have the time or money to do during the construction, or things that I had kind of planned to do once I'd moved in anyway. But this is definitely something that I wanted to do before I even painted the cabinets. So here I am putting in soft close drawer slides. And the reason that I did not do this before the cabinets were painted or installed is because a fellow named Jerome Powell decided to more than double interest rates in the time between when I started this project and when it had to be done. So because of that, it was a mad scramble to the finish. And that meant that a lot of things that should have been done in a certain order ended up not being able to be done in that order. So the reason I'm doing the soft drawer slides after the cabinets have been installed is because I simply did not have the time or budget to do them during the construction period. Ideally, if you're starting from a blank slate like I was, you would do all of this before you even paint the cabinets, simply because that way you're not having to work around anything or have to fuss with where everything is placed. You can just simply switch stuff out, put it in, and you're good to go. But in this case, that was not an option. The reason I'm starting with this particular drawer is because, again, we had some time constraints and there was some confusion with everything getting done, where we thought we had ordered the cabinets at one point and they actually didn't get ordered. So then we had to order them way later than we actually thought we ordered them. And I had to plead with the cabinet company to please finish them within a certain time frame so that we could get them installed. And luckily for us, they did. Like, no extra charge, but it kind of meant that some things were not quite as carefully done as they should have been. So in this case, the drawer slides on this particular drawer were not installed completely level. So it was really hard to get the drawer in and out. So this kind of became a two birds with one stone thing, where I could fix the drawer slides and make it so that everything would be nice and smooth, and then also kind of do the proof of concept for this particular project. This ended up being a lot more complicated than I'd initially thought, because the electricians ran the main line for the outlets on either side of the island through this back corner. And again, if we had been able to switch out the slides and everything before everything was even installed, this would not have been an issue. They would have just been able to work around the slides. But because we didn't have that luxury, now I kind of had to go through and kind of do a Rube Goldberg-esque type way of holding the slide in so that it didn't interfere with the electrical line at all. Here I'm using the Craig drawer slide with some clamps to hold it in, and this made the job so much easier to have this thing that just kind of held everything in place. I could just, clamp it in and make sure that I had everything resting where it needed to be. It has the little measurement things on the front so you can see exactly how high you're putting everything, so you can make sure both slides are even, and then it just holds the whole slide in place so nicely, and it makes it a lot easier, because especially you can see here, I'm kind of having to cram myself into the cabinet. I'm using my tools as best I can, but it's not ideal. So having something that could just kind of hold the slides and make sure that they did not fall out of place was incredibly helpful. So here I'm feeling pretty good about myself. I've got the slides in place. I've got everything all nice and even. I've kind of had to fuss a little bit with the soft close mechanism, but I'm like, this is great. This is all done. And then I realized with the light that there is a gap between the bottom of the drawer and the frame. So that means I have to take stuff out and try again, which is incredibly frustrating. The reason this is so frustrating and why this is now a Jerome Powell hate account is because I should have been doing this before the cabinets were even painted. But because we were on such a tight time crunch and trying to get everything finished as fast as humanly possible, I now have to go back and struggle like this. And the reason Jerome Powell gave for raising interest rates as fast as he did is because of inflation, and he blamed inflation on basically people getting stimulus checks during the pandemic. Now, according to the federal government, the total cost of the stimulus checks that people got during the pandemic was a little over $800 billion, which admittedly is a lot of money. But a lot of people don't remember, because they didn't directly benefit from it, is that the Fed injected $1.5 trillion to the stock market back in March of 2020. And while some people credit that with why we didn't go into a recession, which, you can debate. There can be, there's no counterfactual that we can run, a parallel universe of March 2020 where the Fed didn't do that. But just in terms of sheer dollar amount that was created out of thin air, supposedly, 1.5 trillion is almost double 800 billion. So if we're going to talk about money created out of whole cloth, maybe start looking at yourself there, Jerome Powell, and maybe think about what you should have done there instead of just punishing regular people who were just trying to, survive. Because what Jerome Powell never talks about is the fact that prices are so high because they can get away with it, because we have corporate consolidation. It doesn't matter where you shop because so many places are owned by the same parent companies. So they're not really competing with anybody. They're just kind of shadow boxing against themselves. So when people can't afford to buy things, they're just going to starve. Or they're going to figure out how to barter and do mutual aid, which is kind of what's starting to happen now in a lot of places. But Jerome Powell and his buddies don't really like that at all. So, again, it's just super frustrating that I'm having to go back and do this when it should have been done months ago. But unfortunately, I could not be in two places at once to make sure that everything got done in the order it was supposed to get done, and I'm kind of having to go back and do it in the quote-unquote wrong order. So anyway, that's enough of that. Here I've adjusted the slides on both the frame and the drawer to make it so that they will fit into the drawer and there will not be a gap between the door and the frame. Suck it, Jerome Powell. Like I said, this is now a Jerome Powell hate account. So I've got other projects like these, like putting in all the shelves in the pantry and finishing up the painting and all kinds of other stuff. So there'll be more of that in the future.